Hi everyone, welcome back to another video, and in this one, this is the second part to the video series I'm doing all about technique. So if you haven't seen the first video, if you click up there, that'll take you to the first part of this video series. But in this one, we're going to look in much more detail all about how the grip works and also our backswing. Two very important things to get right in your technique. As always, if you do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like. If you're new to the channel and you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing. That just really helps me to keep this content coming regularly. Just one more reminder that if anyone's interested in any personal one-to-one coaching sessions, I'm working on this table to help players to improve their game all the time. So if you have a look in the description box below, you'll see all my contact details there for my website and my email address, etc. So please get in touch with me and I'd love to help. So let's get into this video and look all about the grip and the backswing. Okay, so now we can look at the grip and how it works in detail when we actually play a shot. So obviously we looked at earlier the fact that we are just gripping the cue. We've got those two different grips that we can think of. Again, find the one that feels more comfortable to you and suits you. But now we need our grip to actually operate during the shot and behave in a certain way. Now when snooker players play shots, what we want to happen here is as the cue comes back, we want the back fingers to relax off the cue. And then when you play the shot, the fingers come back onto the cue and the hand relaxes again back round the cue. Now you always hear, and this was something that really confused me when I first got into snooker, is about when you do the backswing and the grip relaxes and then the hand comes through and it closes back round the cue. And what that used to suggest to me was that when you're playing the shot and the hand is coming through, you're almost closing and squeezing on the cue, and that's not the case at all. You don't want to add too much tension to this grip. So the way I always try and describe it, let's say you've picked 5 out of 10 in power, we've got that grip strength where the cue can't fall through the hand. Now, I'll do my backswing, the grip will get more relaxed, the hand will open up and let the cue stay a bit flatter. And then when I come through and I've finished the shot, my grip should still be that 5 out of 10 in power. It wouldn't fall out of my hand, but if somebody tried to grab it off me after the shot, they would still manage to get it off me. So the grip, very important there because it also helps the cue to stay flat. When we're doing our backswing and pulling the cue back, we don't want the cue coming up in the air like this. And if you don't let your fingers relax off the cue, it means that the cue starts to get this seesaw effect and it starts to rise up in the air. So let me just show you, for example, if I was to do it wrong, let me show you with a very tight closed grip. So I'll stand behind the shot, just get everything right. Walk into the shot, I'm down on the shot. Now if I keep my hand absolutely closed, you can see that I'm getting that rising motion. It's actually pushing me up as I'm doing my backswing and my feathers, and we don't want that movement of that seesaw action, like I say. Very common thing you see amongst beginner players. Sometimes you even see in players that are making 30 or 40 breaks trying to push themselves onto that next level. They're not quite getting that grip control really good where the hand is opening up. So let's do one now where I'm going to let my hand relax nicely. So I'm standing up behind the shot here, walk into the shot, and now again I've got I know what my feathers are for, so I don't need it to open up. And then when I come back, I'm going to let my hand open up now, you can see, and then when it comes through, it goes back to the delivery there and it goes back to being neutral, and I haven't added any tension on the grip. So that opening up of the hand at the end of the backswing, really important. Like we've just seen there, it helps this cue to stay much flatter and stops it rising up in the air. Now let's look at when you actually play the shot, keeping the grip relaxed. This is something again you'll see a lot amongst the top players that amateurs sometimes just don't do naturally. This first finger stays relaxed and actually allows the cue to stay flat again when we deliver. So I don't want to feel like when I come through I'm pausing and I'm restricting my cue and it's causing it to go up in the air by my wrist going in this direction. I want my wrist to go forward and stay flat, and the front of the hand will open up slightly to allow the cue to stay really flat. So let me try and do one again without that first finger relaxing. So I'm behind the shot, get down into my shot, do my feathers, I know what they're for, let the hand relax on the way back, and then on the way through, I've let the I've tightened up my hand at the back, and you can see I kind of restricted the cue going through. So what we want to do instead, let that hand relax naturally. So it takes a bit of practice, but I actually like doing it just in mid-air, where I'm just floating the cue like this, just letting it go back and forwards, and just feeling how my hand behaves so that the cue stays nice and flat. I can feel when I'm doing it without even getting down on a shot, the back finger's coming off, and then the front finger just relaxing to let the cue stay flat. Okay, so let's try that with a shot. Standing up right behind it. So I'm down into the shot, little pause, do my feathers, back and let the hand open, and then let the hand relax on the way through. And you can see that by letting it relax on the way through and that first finger not interfering with the cue, my cue stayed nice and flat all the way through to my chest. Nice positive delivery there. So you can see there the really important points about how our grip is actually going to work when we play shots. So we want this hand staying nice and relaxed. We don't want this hand strangling the cue to begin with, too much tension on the hand. We do want it to relax on the way back, and we want to try and minimise any pressure on the way through as well. This grip is the only thing that's controlling the cue. We get all of our feel and control from our grip hand being on the cue. And the way we do it nicely as humans is by not introducing too much tension. Tension just means that the cue can be pushed offline one way or the other. The common misconception that you get when players start playing snooker, and I had this as well, you naturally feel in your mind that the way you get the white to do certain things is by squeezing your grip. But that's not the case at all. We'll look later on at some exercises where we control the white ball. The white ball is purely controlled by where we strike it, up and down on that vertical axis, and then on the horizontal axis if we're going to use a bit of side spin. Nothing to do with needing to use our grip to really squeeze the cue and put lots of pressure on there. So always remember with our grip, very important, trying to keep nice and relaxed, let it open up on the way back, let it relax on the way through, no tension on there, and that's how you're going to control this cue more and more accurately. Right, now we're going to look at our final backswing. So our backswing is, after we've done our feathers, paused at the white, and then we pull the cue back, that's what we call our backswing. So our backswing is incredibly important. I would actually say that 90% of a successful shot is all controlled by having that backswing nice and controlled and understanding what we're trying to do with it. Now there's a few important things with the backswing. One is that we don't always need to have the same backswing length. So the amount that you pull the cue back will change depending on what shot you're playing. Now obviously if I've just got to pop this red into the middle here and I only want to use a very low power on the shot, so I'd line this up, I'm just going to hit middle cue ball and just roll this wet red in. So I get down onto my shot, get everything lined up, and then I'll do my feathers, and then my final backswing is only going to be a little short one, and then I can play the shot because I'm not trying to generate any spin or any power on the cue ball, so I don't need to pull the cue back very far. So again, it would be, the analogy there, and a good thing to think of, would be like a golfer again. If they're trying to make a putt and the hole is only that far from where the ball is, they'll just pull it back a little bit with the putter and just put the ball into the pocket. And then if they were making a putt and the hole was about 12 feet away, they would definitely then pull the putter back a little bit further to get that extra control and a little bit more power into the ball. We're doing exactly the same with our snooker here. Obviously, if you're playing a big, deep screw shot, you want to bring the cue all the way back, and then you've got enough space to accelerate the cue and you're not having to jab at the ball. The problem would be if you only pull the cue back a really small amount on a shot where you're trying to generate lots of power and lots of spin on the cue ball. It means that you've only got a very short distance then to try and accelerate the cue back up to speed. And it's much more difficult doing it that way, and that's why the modern player just doesn't really play like that. There's obviously exceptions. Mark Allen is somebody that has a shorter backswing, but he's playing on very fast conditions. When he's in and amongst the balls, it won't really matter. But he's not really renowned for having a lot of cue power, and that's because of that very short action. Whereas you look at the players like Neil Robertson, Judd Trump, Ronnie O'Sullivan, Stephen Maguire, Sean Murphy, they'll all pull the cue all the way back when they need that extra power. So that's the first thing we need to think of. So let's say I'm playing this one now and I want to stop the white and I'm going to hit the shot quite hard. So I'm going to do my setup again, walk in, little pause at the white, do my feathers up, pull the cue right back and then right through the shot. So that was a much higher powered shot just below centre there, and I want just a fraction below centre, much higher power shot. And I did that by using a full backswing, and then I can smoothly build the speed of the cue up again. Now, the reason I say that 90% of the shot is done with the backswing and it's incredibly important, that's because, again, amongst the amateur players that are just starting, they'll tend to have a backswing that is much too fast. So the speed at which they finally bring the cue back is really quick. So I'll show you what you'll commonly see. You'll see a player do their walk in, they'll do their feathers, and then the final backswing is very quick, and then they hit the ball. Now, it's just not very reliable for getting a nice, smooth, consistent strike. You might have some success doing it quickly, but again, all of the top modern day players will have that final backswing smooth and in control, and then they play the shot. A bit like if you were imagining you were doing archery and you were going to pull the arrow back nice and controlled and then release and let it go. That's kind of the way we want to get that backswing controlled with our snooker as well. So we don't want that backswing to be rushed. We want it to be nice and controlled. That then helps us get, just like we talked about earlier with those pauses, by having that backswing nice and controlled, that then helps us to have that little bit of a transition between the end of the backswing and the delivery starting. So just make sure that you're not rushing it. So let's have a look at one that's going nice and controlled. So again, behind the shot, do my walk into the shot, little pause, and then do my feathers, and then control backswing, and then play the shot. And by having the backswing nice and controlled, you're never rushing and you're not putting that quick shot in. So always remember, using different backswing lengths depending on how hard you're playing the shot. If you're only playing very soft, you can use a smaller backswing, don't need to pull the cue back very far. If you are using a full backswing, then you want to make sure it's nice and controlled, pull it back nice and slow, don't go too fast, and that gives you then a much smoother delivery. As I say, 90% of your control of the cue will happen from that nice backswing control. Now, the last thing to think about here, we talked earlier when we were talking about the grip, about keeping this cue nice and flat when we pull it back. We don't want this effect. There is one last thing to consider when you're doing a full backswing, and that is the position of this elbow also helps to keep this cue flat. If my elbow at the back here stays fixed and doesn't relax, it means that my arm naturally wants to start to come up in the air and it pulls the cue up in the air. Whereas if I let that elbow relax down, can you see the way it's now dipping? It helps to keep the cue nice and flat. And again, that's something that you just don't see a lot of players doing naturally because they've never really thought about it or been told about it. So if I play one of these shots here, so you're going to see now that I'll get down on the shot. Now watch the position of my elbow on a full backswing here. So I'm going to pull the cue back, keeping the cue really flat, and then right through to my chest. But you should have seen there that on my backswing, my elbow relaxed, it didn't stay fixed, and that helped, as well as my grip opening up, the elbow relaxing also helped to keep the cue nice and flat, and that's very important so you're not getting that seesawing action when you're playing shots. So just to summarise there, the massively important things with the backswing is you can use different backswing lengths depending on the power that you're using and how much spin you're trying to generate on the white. You don't want the backswing to be rushed. That's a common thing amongst beginner players and players below 50 break standard, that the final backswing will be too fast. So make sure that backswing is coming back nice and in control and it's not happening too quickly. And then the last thing we just looked at there was making sure that when we do a full backswing, when we're really needing to pull the cue all the way back, you let your elbow relax slightly. That keeps the cue nice and flat. We don't get that seesaw action, and then you're hitting the cue ball much more accurately. So, as I always say, everybody, if you did enjoy this video, remember to give it a like. If you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. That just really does help me to keep all this content coming regularly. Just one more reminder that if anybody is interested in any personal one-to-one training sessions on this table, I would love to help. So if you have a look in the description box below, you'll find all my details there for my website, my contact details, my email. So please get in touch and I would love to help with your game. One last reminder, make sure you stay tuned for next week's video, which is going to be the third part of this technique series. We're going to look in more detail there at the delivery, getting that nice and smooth and understanding how we get a nice consistent strike each time. And as always, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Cheers.